To filter or not to filter, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the encounter for the provider to receive the slings and arrows of an outraged LEP, or to take umbrage against this rising tide of profanities and change them to my version of what they should be, and in doing so, owning them. Welcome, colleagues. This episode we bring you is a bit more adult-oriented than any other episode that you may have witnessed. Please be advised that all viewers who suffer from the following afflictions, problems with bad words, should at this point change the channel, or perhaps mute the remainder of the production. However, as we all know, if I hear it, I will interpret it.
Hi everyone, welcome to a second episode of Interventions of the Third Kind. What up, Sean?
Hey, you know what? I got to tell you, I'm thrilled to be here. As always, I can't wait to share. I'm so excited to be here. It's awesome to be here.
Let me tell you something. First of all, I want to thank all those viewers for all the shares and all the love and all the great comments that we got from that first episode, guys. I really appreciate that. Keep those subscriptions coming.
Absolutely. I feed off of the comments. I got to be honest with you. I do love to get crazy attention. You know what? The best thing I got to do was share that with my mom and dad. So I was super excited to do that for certain. Yeah.
That's awesome. And we really appreciate your support, guys. Thank you so much for that. So, like we said since the first episode, let's get down to business and let's talk about what happened this week interpreting. So basically this week, while interpreting, I actually noticed that, nowadays doctors and many chains and networks of hospitals are doing doctor consultations through video or video chat or over the phone, and actually mostly video chat. I'm gonna refer to those here, or video calls, telemedicine. And what I have noticed is that a lot of LAPs get very frustrated with technology because they really cannot figure it out on the go like any person that, manage those kinds of devices in a daily basis. And I think that one thing that I notice is that we as interpreters have to be very tolerant and very, before assuming that the problem is on the LEP's end or on the provider's end, try to be more communicative or more, tell more what's going on constantly, be very transparent with the situation. So it will be a better experience for both ends, but particularly for the LEP, because they are the ones doing these transitions, to a new device, to new modalities, and we are there with them. So I think since this is the new era for now, we need to be a little bit more tolerant and kind of polish those customer service skills. So whenever we have sessions and we have encounters, we can give them the best, kind of support. I'm not saying be an IT department on the go. I'm saying try to be a little bit more tolerant, and before, jumping into conclusions of any kinds of ends, just be tolerant and, think about this, go to your customer service and said, is there anything I can do? Maybe, you can help out the LEP a little bit in terms of where they need to go. Because sometimes even going to the text and pressing that link is a very challenging thing for them. So I just want to say that that's what happened to me this week. What about you, Sean? What happened to you this week?
I'm going to just kind of speak on to what you were talking about as far as video interpreting. That's kind of the new normal. That's for certain. We're all dealing with this transition to telehealth, and I experienced, let's say, something that I'm not used to having happen in an encounter. I'm used to children LEPs staring at me. I'm used to that. But the problem was I was involved with a video interpretation that I had, you get in the call, you don't know what's going on, you don't know who or what's the patient, what's the other. I'm in the middle of this encounter, and it comes to be that it's actually a child psychology encounter, but mom is the LEP, the child's not. So while he's speaking to the doctor, I'm just looking at my notepad because they're speaking in English. But then when I'm interpreting for mom, who's speaking with the doctor, the child is behind her making faces and doing this kind of stuff, and it's all I can do to just keep my face perfectly, no movement, and just because I try not to look up too much. But I feel like the takeaway is this is new, and certainly that wouldn't happen in the room. It's never happened while I've been in the room. Kids staring at me is one thing, but mom would just and that'd be it. But on the phone, I don't know. I mean, I kept thinking to myself, can't she see him? Like in the little square? Doesn't she see that little person dancing? He's doing the thing right now. And I'm trying to, so yeah, I feel like it's like the Wild West. There needs to be some ground rules set. I mean, I kind of wanted to, as the interpreter, be like, excuse me, this is the interpreter. Would you tell that kid to go somewhere else and go somewhere and play somewhere? Or ma'am, would you please step into a room and shut the door? Because you're killing me, Smalls. It was a real challenge to but again, the whole point is I don't really have a whole lot of experience in that specific happenstance, because this is all so brand new. So I mean, a good time was had by all. No interpreters were harmed during the filming of the encounter per se, but overall, it was one of these things where you come out of it like, next time I'm intervening. I will intervene and tell somebody to put that kid in the chair. Because it was, like I said, it was exciting. Let's say.
But let me tell you, Sean, that kind of goes along to our background. Remember at the pediatric hospitals? I mean, it is the same thing because the kids were there live running and screaming their head off.
Oh.
Remember, they even gave us bubbles. So we would try to use that to kind of distract them while we were talking to the parents. It's kind of, to me, it's like we need to kind of reinvent the etiquette when it comes to that kind of thing on video.
Yeah, it doesn't, there's nothing there. It's, every time you're there, you're kind of figuring it out as you go. And so it's almost like you cannot swim these waters if you already do not know how to perform CPR upon yourself, let's say. For here, there be sharks, right? This is deep water. This is a place where, like you say, if you got to whip out the bubbles, you got to whip out the bubbles. But at the same time, you have a portion of your attention still going with this dialogue and the facilitation. Like I said, I can remember very, very red-faced Sean as the child. I mean, what do you do when the child in Spanish says, "Look at how tall he is"? And the doctor, what'd he say? He said, "Look at how tall he is." And it's just, again, it's in the room, it's one thing, but on the phone or in these video calls especially, it's a new world. I really feel like this is kind of going to be moving forward this way, especially now, some of these where it's almost like a FaceTime call. They're on video, and I've interpreted things like, move over and let me see your foot. And I'm like, boy, I'm so glad I'm just on the phone right now, because it's interesting. But, in the room, you could always just kind of, or I used to stare at my notepad all the time. You know what I mean? So I didn't make eye contact, But yeah, there have been some situations where I'm on the video and I'm just kind of,
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of distracts you, but at the same time, I mean, I think we have dealt with that in the past in a different way. It's just that maybe we're not that used to it, because I think if you would have a call like that, right, a pediatric call involving a child every single day, right, you would be more like, I guess, not that sensitive to it, right? But I mean, at the same time, it's kind of weird because you have to do it in a different way, and then you don't know what to do with your face, even though you have
yeah,
been.
if this appears, I've had children just, I mean, like I've been focused on something, and in the middle of an utterance, the child catches my eye and stops talking, and I'm like, good job, great, great, Sean, great, So it happens from time to time, that giant white person in the room speaking Spanish. It's disconcerting to children at times. I don't know what else to say.
But that's what happened this week. I hope if you guys are going through something similar, then don't think you are alone because we are all going through it at some point.
Hi, Maria Baker here from Madison, Alabama. I work with Spanish and English, and I am absolutely against being a filter. But I have to admit that if I am not focused, if I'm not concentrating as I should, sometimes I do filter. Now there's my confession.
I feel that at times, as a medical interpreter, I don't interpret foul language or uncomfortable expressions the way I did in the criminal courts. One of the possible reasons is because, as we know, criminal courts and hospitals' interpretations is slightly or are slightly different. In the hospitals, we can be at times advocates, but never, ever in the courts. I won't lie, I filter, mea culpa, but I try to go back to the standard at all times, foul language or not.
So profanity is tricky, just like slang is. It varies so much from country to country that you just have to be ready to learn at least the message. I had a patient that was telling the provider, because he was very upset, and he told her, "Te voy a chingar tu madre." And I knew that meant beating her up, so that's what I said. "I'm gonna beat you up," or "I'm gonna beat the crap out of you." But then I was consulting with a coworker of mine about that, and I told him what happened, and they said that it actually has a higher level of profanity. It's not, "Oh, I'm gonna hit you," or "I'm just gonna beat you up," but it's, "I'm gonna beat the shit out of you." So that's technically what I should have said, but I wasn't quite sure the level of profanity it had, so I guess I tried to do my job. I said, "I'm gonna beat you up," or beat the heck out of you, or crap out of you. I don't know, one of those. But so yeah, I mean, that's my opinion on it. Still try to do your very best and convey the message the best you can.
To be profane or not to be profane? That is the question.
Absolutely. The important thing to keep in mind is that it's not your message. So I think it's important. Again, we really kind of go into a focus on why some of us don't feel comfortable using that kind of language, why some of us look forward to using that kind of language. And I think we really do get some good submissions from a lot of folks here. We got great reference from expert in the field. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into this as well. This is near and dear to my heart for sure.
And the thing is this, we as interpreters, when we were talking about the possibility of this show, we kind of agree on the fact that we interpret everything that is being said. We kind of had that hope that we get that kind of session. So we live it like it's at the telenovela, right? The telenovela day. But at the same time, there's other interpreters that don't feel that comfortable with that kind of situation, and that's completely okay. That's why we decided that we were going to bring in an expert to talk to us about those things. What would she recommend as an interpreter's trainer, and also as an interpreter that does it for a living, like us, from Monday to Friday, right? Every single day. I think the most important thing of this episode, or this discussion, is that we are going to discuss ways to kind of either manage the situation better, add to whatever we are doing, or add to whatever we are not doing. But what it is, it's some recommendations for you to kind of improve your professional endeavor, right?
Yeah, well, the focus is, like you say, keeping true to that original message, remaining the conduit. The filtration of that utterance is the antithesis of the function of any interpreter. So I always kind of advise folks that as soon as you feel that you're uncomfortable with what you have to say, you've already left the conduit role because you're experiencing an emotional reaction.
Correct. And I want you to, without further ado, introduce our guest, because she is a very dear colleague to you. So I want you to do the honors, Sean.
I am super excited that Gloria is joining us today. Gloria Rivera Baldessari, let me tell you, she is a physician, she's a surgeon, she's an English and Spanish translator, she is a certified medical interpreter, both CMI and CHI, dual wielding. She works in California as a certified court interpreter, plus she was CHIA's Interpreter Trainer of the Year in 2018. So after practicing medicine in Peru, Gloria came to the United States and completed a professional certificate of translation and interpreting at UCSD. And then after working as a trainer for that certificate, she became a faculty member at the National Center for Interpretation in the University of Arizona. Gloria has worked as a freelancer and in-house in the medical and court fields for the past decade. And I'll tell you, this passion for our profession and sharing her knowledge and experience, she's traveled all over the United States, Central America, South America, even Europe. And actually, currently, she's taken all of her knowledge, mixing that medical knowledge, her experience as a translator, and that innate curiosity that Gloria definitely has, to all mix up and create these incredibly awesome classes that she does through our business, Blue Urpy. So without further ado, Lorna, I'm super excited to welcome Gloria to our show. So thank you so much for being here, Gloria. Really thrilled to have you. Lorna and I have been just really looking forward to hanging out with you. We got this, super excited. I always love to pick the exciting stuff to go over and needle and pick and talk over many times. And we've been going back and forth about the whole filter, not filter, profane word, bad off color type situation. So we wanted to get your feelings on that. Absolutely.
And actually, I'm so glad you accepted the challenge to be in this show, Gloria. I really appreciate that, because we were talking about this topic, and this is a very hot topic for many interpreters, not only Spanish, English interpreter, any sort of language. I mean,
True.
we always have that kind of that we feel like we shouldn't be saying things like that because we were taught a different way, or depending on how we were raised, and religion, many things can jump into that. But I wanted an expert, and as soon as we started saying all these things, Sean said, I have a perfect expert, and I say, yay! So
with whom else do I share
welcome to the
profanity?
show. Woo!
With me. Thank you so much. Well, I don't know. This is kind of funny because I was so Sean and I met because he was an organizer for a conference, and he reached out, and then we started complaining about the same things, and then that's when we realized that he was my brother from another mother, and I was his sister from another mister, and then like he has experience with Mexican people that curse often, and I have this particularity that one of my favorite things is listening to how people curse in other languages. Not other languages, like other variants of Spanish, and I'm fascinated by it. So I guess it is because of the forbidden, because when you're a kid, it's like good girls don't speak like that. Like my parents never washed my mouth with soap, thankfully. But for example, my dad would never curse in front of us, and my mom would use only one word, and now is the one my sister and myself use. And it's funny because now my brother-in-law uses it, and my boyfriend, who doesn't speak Spanish, uses it. So it's hilarious. So it's funny because when I attended I call it co-ed school, so I've heard everything under the sun. And I remember once my dad took me to this soccer match, and people were cursing left and right because like it's a soccer match, it's the usual thing to do. And my dad was like, oh my God, like trying to cover my ears. I'm like, oh, Dad, it's okay. I mean, I hear worse stuff at school. He was like, the private school I pay so much for. I'm like, yes, true. I don't know. The way I look at it is it prepared me for life. And you know what? As a girl, you need to learn how to stand your ground and defend yourself. So even though I wasn't that tall, because I'm 5'4", I was fast and witty, and that helps a lot. So when you start watching, for example, in my experience, I grew up in Peru, and we didn't have a lot of Peruvian TV, so most of the TV would come from Mexico. So I learned Mexican slang, and then when you start watching Mexican movies, you learn the bad words. And I was like, oh, that word is so cool because I've noticed they use it as a noun, as a verb, as an adverb, as an adjective. How fascinated, how malleable this word is. And my sister would be like, here you go again. I'm like, and then Argentinian TV, you learn other things. And then Spanish TV, you learn other things. So I haven't been exposed to our countries, but when you move to Mexifornia, because I live in California, and I've also lived in Arizona, which is California adjacent, you hear that all the time, and that's the words that when patients or opponents want to express themselves, they're gonna use them, you know. And usually when that would pop up, I would be like, boom, and I'd go like, oh, I'm gonna tell Sean later, like to double check what he thinks about this option, and we would start. That's how it started. I would tell Sean, oh, so the patient said this. And he's like, ooh, what do you say? And I'm like, I said this. And he's like, oh, that's so good. And I'm like, would you have said something like that? He's like, yeah, but you know what? I also would have said this. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about that.
See what I said about learning stuff? I'm telling you. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's something that comes up. And I firmly believe that if you know that ENT is otorrinolaringólogo, you need to know how to say the F word in Spanish or your other languages. It's a word, you know, it's a word that we decide to give a meaning. Like I had a friend who's much older than I am, and she told me the story that she had a neighbor that was British, and she had female dogs, and she would take them out and go, bitches, bitches, calling her dogs. And she would have a blast, but the British lady didn't know what was going on because she was much older than her. And to her, it was a word that meant the female dog. But now it has a different value. So I'm also into this word used to mean something back in the day, and now it's kind of like evolves like a nice Pokemon, and you get a different flavor.
You know, if we're going to speak to the viewers out there, the interpreters that are wondering how to handle this stuff, maybe people don't, maybe they don't approach them with such felicity as myself, for example. But, you know, the question to ask is, or let's say a question to answer, question asked, why is it so important to interpret this profanity? Now, before you answer, I want you to know I'm already thinking of a quote that I remember that you told me previously. So I will quote you to you later, but so why would you think, why is it important to interpret the profanity? Why everything that's heard gets interpreted? Why is that?
Because we're the speaker's voice, and if we skip that bad word, we're taking it away from him or her. And who are we to take that voice away, you know? It's pretty simple.
Well, I remember that we had this conversation previously, and you said it takes away the patient's dignity.
That too.
Okay, and that was just like a bell, the profundity. Truly, I was like, damn, you know. And I have, you know, proselytized that to many a colleague. You know, that specific, you know, point. You take away their dignity by filtering that information. Lorna, what are your thoughts on that?
I honestly think the same way. I mean, to me, it makes a big difference. I mean, maybe we as professionals, we're seeing it like, oh my God, I'm in my place of work, you know, I shouldn't be saying those things. But what we are not taking into consideration is that we are just the conduit. We're not there to be embarrassed. We're not there to think about anything in particular. Like, I can tell you a very recent example I've heard. This nurse was an Asian nurse, and I'm going to explain why I'm saying Asian, right? Because this has a meaning. Everything has a meaning. It was an Asian nurse. She came to the room of the patient because she was frustrated. The patient kept pressing the button every 5 seconds, asking her for ice. And she brought in the interpreter saying, interpreter, I want you to explain to the patient that I cannot be coming here every 5 minutes, every 5 seconds, because she wants eyes. She cannot have any procedures or anything by mouth because she's about to have a procedure, and that's basically it. I cannot give her anything by mouth. The interpreter said that. So the patient, very frustrated, said, well, pues si no me lo quieres dar por la boca, entonces dámelo por el culo. Y para nuestros, for our viewers, I mean, culo means ass, okay? It's, if you cannot give it to me by mouth, then give it to me by the ass. But the interpreter in this case decided not to interpret the word ass because of, obviously, she felt, kind of weird about it, right? So when she said that, still the nurse was not understanding how frustrated the patient was because she asked, I'm not understanding, what do you mean by rectum? And I'm
Does she want an enema?
Gloria, so as interpreters, do we focus, I mean, because I know I interpret everything, but for other interpreters out there that get uncomfortable with that kind of situation, I mean, do we have to focus on the intention or on the wording? You know what I mean? Because what I'm thinking is maybe I can come up with a word that kind of similar to it, and it doesn't sound that bad if I know it about it, and then focus more on the intention of what they are trying to convey. You know what I mean? Or do we focus on the wording? I mean, how do you think that can impact communication?
Before I start that, I wanted to share this. I've noticed when people do not want to curse, and I like to know why, because to me that's fun, because it's like, your mom told you no candy before dinner, and this is a time where your grandma says, here, have some chocolate, and you're looking at your mom and you're eating the chocolate in front of your mom because grandma said it was okay. So cursing because you're interpreting feels like that in a way. I think that's why I enjoy it so much. So when I ask people, why do you feel, I don't even put words in their mouth. It's like, why don't you want to curse? They're like, well, I feel uncomfortable. I'm not used to doing it. I don't want to offend a provider. And that's when I tell them, okay, who is the subject of the sentence you just said? They're like, I. Okay, but you're not here. That's the big issue. It's you are someone else's voice. And they're like, oh. And that's when I realized that it's not because it's because they're not understanding their role. Like you said, we're conduits. So it's not me offending the provider or not me being rude or crass. It's the patient. So once you notice and you internalize that you're someone else's voice, I think it's easier for the person to do it. And why should we do it? Because I love explaining things with analogies. It's like if I give you food without seasoning, it would not taste the same. So, for example, I had a patient that we were waiting, when I used to do workers' comp, we were waiting for a really long time for the provider, and then we go to the waiting room, to the main room, and then we waited some more. But I'm talking about like close to 2 hours for the provider to show up. And then he comes in all happy. He's like, hey, Mr. Garcia, how are you doing? And I just looked at him because he had been complaining that he had a lot of back pain, lower back pain. And he said, ¿Cómo estoy? ¿Cómo chingados quiere que estés? Tengo la espalda jodida. And I was like, oh, here I go. So I was like, how am I doing? How the fuck do you want me to do if my back is all fucked up? And then I'm like, is that the right word? And then the provider looked at me and he was all shocked. And I'm like, good. Because you know what? If the patient spoke English, he most likely would have said the same thing I said. So if I had said, well, how do you want me to be if my back is all messed up? You don't get the same punch in the gut, as if my back is all fucked up. Because the provider needs to understand that the patient is in pain. The patient is frustrated. We have been waiting for 2 hours. he's just getting ibuprofen every time he sees him. His injury is really bad. So who am I to take that away from him? That's why when I talked to Sean, I said, you're not only taking his voice, but his dignity, his independence too.
And you know what? I am glad you say that also because, yeah, as interpreters, we are used to doing our job Monday through Friday, every day. I mean, switching from one topic to the other, that's our element. That's what we do. It's second nature to us. And that's why we do it as a profession, right? Because we love what we do. But at the same time, we don't take into consideration that sometimes these things are impacting these patients at this particular moment in the time that they are most vulnerable. Like I can feel the pain on that guy. I would have said the word fucked so happily, also because I have had that back pain myself. I cannot be sitting here for 2 freaking hours, and sometimes they are just very happy and they don't control the tone. And that can happen with interpreters too. I mean, you can go into an encounter super happy and it's a miscarriage and you're like, tone down, switch immediately, please,
And it's funny because when I taught this, it was when I teach ethics, I also teach this as part of ethics because it's part of the meaning. So I usually try to find, since I'm in California and I know the patient is Mexican, I try to find something that's equally offensive, but usually is into English, not into Spanish. I had to do it once into Spanish. I was like, oh, look at the provider. But it's because they already had a relationship and they would tease each other like that. And I found it fascinating because I've never had to do it into Spanish. So you need to find something equally offensive in the other language and its meaning. Because if you say, I can't think of something right now. If you say, oh, poop, it's not the same thing as, oh, shit, you need to do the same thing. Unless, for example, the other day, someone said, someone was asking in a forum on Facebook, este es un hijo de la vida. How would you translate it into English? And I was like, oh, let's see what our people say. And then I saw he's a son of the life, a son of the life. Someone got very poetic. And I said, well, to me, this is like when you say shoot instead of shit, is as a softer version of hijo de la chingada, because I have a friend who's Mexican and she's very proper and she says hijo de la tostada when she's very angry. So I think that when you say este hijo de la vida is because you're trying to replace one with the other. So I said into English, instead of saying son of a bitch, I would say son of a gun. And then I got the and I'm like, we interpret meaning.
Absolutely where I would have gone.
It's the same thing with British. Shit doesn't sound the same in British because they say shite. And I'm like, I was watching this series called The Orphan, Black Orphan. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Love that series, right?
Yeah.
So I'm watching it. The first episode, they say shite like 20 times. And I'm like, shut the hell up. It doesn't have the same effect as shit.
Yeah, it feels weird. Yeah. But that's how they curse based on the accent. It's like if I tell you instead of shut the fuck up, it's like tell you shut the front door. But that's what I'm trying to say in a more polite way. So you need to know like your real cursing and the softer one, just in case someone is polite and likes to use the softer version. You need to have several levels of offensiveness.
Yeah, I actually have thought about that. I mean, kind of thinking, but I think I'm going to comment on that when we give you our recommendation, kind of, and you tell us what you think about our recommendation.
So, as a trainer, all right, let me get your thoughts here. Is it smart to avoid interpreting what could be a potentially offensive utterance and instead maybe advising the intended recipient and going from there? What are your thoughts on that?
My answer is, what would Bruce Lee do? Would Bruce Lee let the opponent know, hey, I'm going to punch you, or just punch? I've been watching the Bruce Lee story. You cannot let the provider know, hey, by the way, he's gonna tell you you suck. You just need to, the best encounter is when the provider tells me, oh, I forgot you were here, because that means that we were not there. We're a voice and they have a relationship and they forgot I was there. So why would I tell the provider, ding, 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 hey, by the way, this is not me, it's the patient? He should know that by now. You know, either he's never worked with an interpreter, or you have never done the pre-session, or you're saying he says. Actually, if you said he says, it would be easier, because that's when you know it's not you, it's him. When I did that cursing into English, the provider was like, and I just went like this. And that's all I did. That was the only time it was me. It's like, and instead of saying, this is the interpreter speaking, by the way, it wasn't me, it was him, I just went like this. That's all I said. And then back to interpreting, because we are the conduit. We're not there to hold the patient's hand or to take care of the doctor's feelings. We're there to be everyone else's voice, and that's it.
And we are supposed to be neutral, period. It's neutral. We are not from one side or the other. I do a little bit more on this here with the other. And actually, I wanted to comment on what you said earlier, that the perfect encounter, I mean, for me, it sounds like a song. It's like, you know, you remember Snoopy? It was Snoopy, right? The cartoon that the mom was like,
Yeah.
right? So to me, it should sound like ba 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 all the way till the end. And I have had those. I have interpreted those encounters, and whenever I'm done, I'm like, I need to go take a break. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore, but this feels like that kind of moment. I mean, because, you know, we're humans. We have better days, we have bad days, all that stuff. I mean, right? But the funny thing is how everybody kind of, you know, see it in a different way. What the perfect, you know, interpretation, or what the perfect session, or what the perfect encounter might sound like, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me is when they forget I'm there, I did a great job, because we're not supposed to be seen or heard. Kind of like a Hispanic kid, you're not supposed to be seen. I mean, heard yes, but not seen in the case of being an interpreter. But if they know you're there, you're not doing a good job. If you would like to be center of attention, you're not doing a good job. I mean, being an interpreter may not be the thing for you, basically.
Yeah, because you have to be in and out, and if you have to intervene, you have to identify yourself. Hey, excuse me, interpreter here.
Yeah, no, I do think it's important. I think you have to interpret everything exactly the way you hear it. You know, I'm reminded of this time I was working at a hospital, and I had gotten pulled in out of nowhere. I was just walking down the hall. Mr. Sean, come in here real quick, man. We got the translator. He gonna translate for everybody. I'm just like, there's a PowerPoint? What? Apparently, it was discussing the importance of proper disposal of sharps in their containers and the care thereof and the contents in case they're in, and you know, the potential safety hazards, etc. So I'm standing up there next to the speaker, and we have the Spanish-speaking people, everybody that knew me over here, right, and then all the other people that don't speak Spanish over here. Who's he? You know, he gonna translate. So while he's explaining the importance and going through the presentation, and I'm interpreting, the folks over here, there was a lady that was really agitated. She kept interrupting me. So I guess maybe because I didn't stop her, I don't know. I just kind of let her go. You know, I was in my element, having a good time. It wasn't a medical encounter, let's say. But she kept getting angrier and angrier until the point where she stood up and she was like, I'm going to tell you, so you got the wrong one. I am not going to be one of these people that going to get stuck on one of these people right now. Let me tell you something right now. Something like that happened to me. You got a big problem in your hand, okay? And I don't know if it was the head or the hand and the movement, but I just started pantomiming that in Spanish. Les voy a decir una cosa, no sabes que yo no voy a estar chingando a la madre, Yo no te voy a estar picado ahí por una de esas cubetas de mierda que no sé qué tiene. Déjame explicar. And I'm just going and going. And so everybody over here, all the Spanish people are just like, you know, like the Michael Jackson meme. This is the best presentation we've ever had. Can we do this tomorrow? You know. Meanwhile, everybody over on this side is you know, they were kind of ignoring me. I was over here, but they were backing up their colleague. Yeah, we with her. Hell yeah, we ain't gonna get yeah.
Let me ask you, I mean, I want you to give us your expert opinion on this type of situation. I mean, on what to do or what not to do, or maybe what the trick would be for kind of a reference to kind of get you out of it quickly, or what do you think? I mean, but before you give us your opinion, I want to give you what I think it should be done. And then Sean will give you what you think. And you tell us if we get a gold start or we don't get a gold start today, okay?
Okay.
So what I think basically is I as an interpreter, I have always interpreted everything. I don't care if it's profanity, if it's not profanity. I try to interpret everything and with the intensity, with the intention that it's, meant to be. I mean, I try not to use hands like pointing or stuff like that, but I try to kind of mimic some sort of thing, to kind of alert the patient or the provider at that point, hey, we're getting physical, something going on here, right? But I think that for those interpreters that, don't want to interpret profanity, or if at some point in my life, I get shy when I get older and I don't want to interpret profanity, I think it should be something like create like a toolkit. I mean, qué sé yo, like something with 10 or 5 different words, and kind of go to those words whenever I see the meaning of those other words, kind of come to an agreement with those words and try to get the wording, but with the same intensity. If you don't find a word that has the same intensity, then don't use it, please. Just stick to your protocol as an interpreter, which is being a conduit. What do you think, Sean? What would be your recommendation?
Okay, well, all cards on the table here. I'm in a safe place. I'm amongst friends. But fact is, I'm a rare breed of interpreter. Okay, I in that I approach every encounter hoping, just hoping we're going to be off-roading, hoping things are going to be fruity. I really, I have to confess, I showed up in my Spanish class, as I'm not a native speaker, Spanish class, Spanish 1, 1989, with a list of every expletive that I wanted to know, almost like George Carlin. However, I wanted to learn how to say them all in Spanish. And then throughout the course of the years thereafter, I made a point to not only learn those words, but to understand when they're best utilized, to look up the reasons why they're used, and ponder the mysteries of why one word might be used when it actually means another completely non-related, non-expletive, completely non-vulgar term. So, such thoughts are those of one who studies such, issues. But there's a large driving force behind what I do also, and that's about keeping things fair, about access to communication, and that being denied bothers me. That's one of the drives behind why I care so much about this work. It's wrong for me as an interpreter to receive the energy from an expletive that is created by the speaker. They receive the benefit, the endorphins, the serotonin level increase, the resistance to pain, whatever it might be, by being able to utilize that term. It's wrong for the interpreter, myself, to not do everything that I can to make a point to ensure that its intended recipient understands that word in the exact same way that I did. Okay? I'm not going to be the interpreter that when my LEP says, "Ustedes me llamaron a mí, ¿qué quieren? Pues chingao." Yes, I received a call. What can I do to help you? That's not me. I can remember one time in a hospital, I had a tendency to run to encounters. It was just the way I did it. And actually, it was just the stairs. I run downstairs. I'm a juvenile, whatever you want to call it. I'm hoping to fall. Whatever it might be, I had a tendency to run often. There was a sense of urgency behind every encounter to me. And I often would arrive a little bit overheated. I wore a shirt and tie all the time. I have a thermometer head. I knock things over a lot. When I walked right into the imaging room, as where I was supposed to be, the patient looked up and everyone was very much aware of the fact that I officially fell through the doorway. Okay, we won't get into that. The point is that I arrived and I immediately introduced myself and let's go, said to the tech. They knew me. And patient's first words when he looked at me was, "Está bien jodido este tipo." Okay, so I kind of tripped. But the whole point is that as soon as I went past the threshold of the room, I was in my conduit role. That was it. End of story. As soon as I heard that, this dude's all fucked up, said I. It was, as I'm making my notes and realizing, I just said that about myself. Oh, well, okay, that's what it is. Like I said, thermometer head, I was, whatever. I had run 9-story building. What can I say? But point being is that everybody thought that was a riot, except me, really, because I just, whatever. But the whole point is that that's exactly what I understood. I've got colleagues that have said things to me like, "Man, that's not what jodido means, man. You don't have to say fuck like that, man. You could have said something else." Yes, this chap looks relatively disheveled, does he not, gents? Yeah, no, this is in 1903, okay? I'm going to go for the relatively equally understood colloquialisms that anybody is going to be using. The least common, path of least resistance, whatever you want to call it, okay? That tech exactly understood that. Said, "Oh yeah, that's Sean," and then that was the end of it, right? Same job, same hospital. I'm called to a room because there's a gentleman who's angry. As soon as I walk in, he knew me. "Ven acá, come here. Este animalito ni se presentó como doctora, no me lo va a tocar, eh?" In that Matrix-like time split when I turned to address the provider. And I'm thinking to myself, this bandage is going to get ripped off this guy's leg so quick. He's going to be a changed man. He's going to see the light. Because I knew that internist was just not about to even wait in any way. A very busy person was this doctor. So when I rendered that utterance, that animal, she didn't even tell me she was a doctor. She's not going to touch me. That doctor made it very clear that she was either going to remove his bandage or she was going to have a couple of nurses come in and they were all going to remove the bandage. So he just kind of gritted his teeth and I was dismissed summarily. But the fact is that the way I hear it, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that that's the way that provider gets it. I mean, what else are we here for?
What
An
do you
A.
think, Gloria? Do we get the gold star or we do not
Yay, you got an A. Woo!
Excellent.
As a student and as a trainer that has attended conferences, there's something that always stays with me. We're there, whether court, medical, education, community, to level the playing field. 1. 2, we're there to convey meaning. So we're there, but we're not there. So usually when I talked to Sean about this, when I do my, I like to call it the intro, but it's the pre-session. I usually say, "Hi, my name is Gloria. I'm your interpreter. Everything you say in Spanish, I'll say in English. Everything the provider says in English, and I'll say in Spanish. Don't worry, everything you say is confidential or private because sometimes they don't understand confidential. And please speak in short sentences." That's my wham bam pre-session. The reason why I don't say everything you say I will translate is because I notice that people don't know what a translator is, or I'll interpret, they don't know what an interpreter is because I call it a translator. So that's when I started saying everything you say, and then it mutated to, I will be your voice in English and I will be the provider's voice in Spanish. And I notice when I do that, it is understood much faster, 1, and 2, I'm empowering, usually the LAP speaker. So if I'm telling this person I will be his voice, who am I to take it away from him? I would be lying, if he starts cursing because he's frustrated, he's angry, he's in pain. And again, I don't want to offend the provider, but you know what? I'm not letting the patient offend the provider. So who am I to go like, no, don't offend the provider. He's a provider. He's higher in the food chain. Who am I to do that to the patient, And the other thing is, if a patient curses at the provider and I change the word not to offend the provider, even if the patient doesn't speak English, because most of them, let's be honest, speak English, not that much, but understand way much more than they can speak, and they don't feel comfortable sometimes because it's a medical setting and they don't want to say the wrong word or be offensive because respect is part of our culture. That's why they request an interpreter, but they can understand what we're saying. And if we tweak what they're saying in order to not offend the provider, they can, even if, again, even if they don't speak English, you can see the provider's face and you're like, hold on a second. I told him he was an asshole and he's not flinching. So what happened? And then you start losing trust in your interpreter. So even because you're trying to do things that are not part of a role, you're causing more damage than good, you know? The other thing is, I like to say that when you interpret, is like you're painting, you know? So if this patient used a certain color, I need to use the same color. Like it's like you see the scenery and you use the same color to create the same image. It's like he's using a very bright orange and I'm using a very light orange. It's not going to be the same picture, you know? You need to be faithful. And if the reason why you can't be faithful is because you don't have a terminology, start watching movies, you know? Start watching movies in a language you go in your target language and get proficient about it. You know, try to say it in front of a mirror because you have someone staring at you, and give yourself a permission to do it. In a way, it's kind of undoing what we have been told that only, for example, in Hispanic cultures, uneducated people use that terminology. People that live on the streets use that terminology. People of ill reputation use that terminology, especially when it's women. It's very difficult for us to curse because we're not, so good girls don't speak like that, you know? So it's a lot of unlearning and giving yourself permission to just like blurt it out.
I got very comfortable with cursing in Spanish, listening to one of my favorite Mexican rock bands, because I'm a metalhead. You know, Molotov is my favorite band. And I know all the songs from top to bottom with all the bad words. I don't care. I go singing in my car, paseaba en la troca, y yo ahí, puto, el que no brinque, que no salte, puto.
Oh my God,
I mean, you know what? And it makes me feel good because at the same time that I'm learning how to curse, right, and how to get comfortable with it, I'm also breaking my own barriers. You know what I mean? I'm expressing myself. I'm getting comfortable with it. I mean, and I have done it many times, and I have seen them in concerts many times, and
cool.
I love it.
And it's very cathartic too, you know?
They're
Some people write stuff.
Yes.
Well, not having seen that band, but having spent many, we'll say, you know what? I'll just say a lot of time in many mosh pits. Okay. I mean, there was a White Zombie show and I had a boot right here and I was in the front row too. And it was awesome until my elbow hit this person in the forehead.
That's not good.
Crazy.
You know what?
Crazy.
I am so, Gloria, you don't know how happy I am to have met you today. I love your views. It's like listening to the perfect message from high above, you know. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you decided to come over to the show and
thank you.
Give us that expert advice. And for those of you who are watching, Gloria in train interpreters. And if you are behind on your CEUs, if you want to get trained, or maybe you just saw our first show and decided to become an interpreter, there's a lot of trainings on her website that you can use as a basic training to build on whatever you want to do. Maybe you don't want to do medical interpretation. Maybe you want to go court or legal, or maybe you just want to stay in customer service. But whatever you want to decide, that's a very good resource there for you guys to, use it. And you snooze, you lose. So you better go there right now. And so guys, you know, you can use that as a resource. And again, Gloria, thank you so much for your expert advice. Thank you so much for your time, for being here with us, and for our viewers that are also, you know, watching this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for making my mom not proud, saying I'm an expert in cursing. But hey, I'm an expert in terminology in both languages. That
Top of
just
the world.
happens to be a different specialty.
And thank you guys for being with us again in another episode of Interventions of the Third Kind. Sean and I really appreciate you being here. Did we have fun or not, Sean?
It was incredible. One of my favorite subjects, focusing on some of my favorite words with some of my favorite people. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm so thrilled. I can't wait to share it with everybody.
And thank you so much, Sean, for sharing Gloria with us. She was an excellent resource, and I miss her already. She makes a whole lot of sense to me. And for you guys out there who are watching, please send us a comment. Let us know what you want to discuss. We are open to suggestions every single day. 100% for you guys.
I again, like I said, this is always fun for me. I'm super excited. I wanted to just make sure we let everybody know, yeah, we're here on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook under the same name. Quite frankly, if you wanted to message us and send us a video, that's probably the easiest way, since everybody can just do that on their phones. Feel free to, just like Lorna said, I want to echo that too. We are all about service to others. Okay, so this is about supporting our colleagues. So if there's something that's on your mind, I want to hear about it. We absolutely want to go over it and bring in some more SMEs just like Gloria, and hash it out and find out the answers. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. Absolutely.
Dear Spanesthesiologist who doesn't think he needs an interpreter, you're welcome. When you come in the room after I've been there for 45 minutes facilitating for all of your colleagues, and you ignore me and try to speak to the patient with your 5 or 6 words you remember from dinner last week at El Camino Real, you're wrong. Nobody understands what you mean when you ask them, you never big sleep one time, remember your life, operate never? You might think that that's coming across clearly. You're wrong. Here's a suggestion. You take care of the medicine part. You focus on the patient. I, as the interpreter, I'll stay invisible and just facilitate the communication. That way, nobody wonders why this doctor sounds like Tarzan trying to describe a gorilla argument. Just a little heads up from your friendly neighborhood interpreter.